What happens when one of the most well-known and iconic couples in content creation and esports history decides to abruptly break off their relationship after 6 years of being together? More importantly, what happens when they tell their millions of followers that it was completely mutual, amicable, and had no drama whatsoever? Well, I'm glad you asked. Many would refuse to believe the narrative that this was amicable, accusing the woman in the relationship, Kyedae, of cheating, going as far back as 5 months before the breakup and outlining how she had unfollowed her best friend on social media because she was coincidentally hanging out with her ex-boyfriend. Hell, even before the breakup announcement was made, fans were already aware that they had broken up because they weren't even wearing their engagement rings on stream anymore. And somehow, we'd find out that there was a Reddit post made 2 years ago accusing Kyedae of cheating on her boyfriend at a convention when she was there alone. And if that wasn't enough, we had a self-admitted pedophile enter the ring. This is when he'd tell the whole world that back in 2023, he had a one-on-one conversation with Kyedae in which she admitted to wanting to experiment with other men. Guys, this is easily one of, if not the messiest breakup I've ever witnessed in my life. And it's crazy to think that this all stemmed from something that was meant to be amicable. It's riddled with misinformation and extremely dangerous theories. So I thought we had to talk about it in an objective manner so that way you can make your own opinion in this mess. If you like my videos and want to see exclusive content, then make sure to check out my stack.com page in the description and the pinned comment. And now, without further ado, let's get right into this mess. Alright, so first things first, who are the two people involved in this disastrous incident? Let's start off with Tenz. Tenz would start playing the game Counter-Strike at the age of 3, and by the time he would reach his teenage years, he'd be playing at the pro level, starting his journey in 2017, and by 2019, he would have made it big by signing with one of the biggest esports teams in North America, Cloud9. But even with that in mind, as a player, he wasn't really able to stand out in the pro scene. That would all, of course, change in the year 2020. This is when Valorant would launch its closed beta access. And even though it wasn't really intentional, everything had lined up perfectly to drive hype for this game to levels never seen before. It was barely a month after lockdowns had begun in the majority of the world because of COVID-19, and the way you'd be able to get a key is by watching a stream on Twitch. The caveat though was that there was no guarantee you'd get it. You would just have to watch a stream for as long as possible, and after every hour of watch time, you'd get a very small chance of getting a key. This is why every streamer imaginable on the platform began playing this game and was in the category, sometimes going to sleep and rerunning old clips just so that people can watch. It was an infinite money glitch, and everyone wanted a key. However, Tenz didn't really have to worry about getting a key. He'd have access to the closed beta on day one, just like many other pros, and would play the game a lot. And so when the first iteration of ranked mode would come out, he was already prepared. And due to this, he would become the first player globally to ever reach the Radiant rank, the highest rank in competitive Valorant. Think of it like Challenger in League of Legends or Top 500 in Overwatch. This legendary accomplishment guaranteed the fact that the entire community was going to be aware of who he was. And so, due to Valorant's incredible hype in 2020, by 2021, many esports organizations would start making their own teams for the competitive scene. One of the biggest and most successful ones would be Sentinels, and they would recruit Tenz immediately. By that same year, he was seen as the game's superstar. If you had played the game in any way competitively or cared about its competitive scene, then you would have known who he was. It was that big of a deal. And I mean, the numbers speak for themselves. During his Counter-Strike days, he would never have more than a few hundred viewers. By the time Valorant had come out and he would reach Radiant as the first player globally, he would gain tens of thousands of followers and thousands of concurrent viewers. By the time he'd be signed to Sentinels and would become a household name, he would gain hundreds of thousands of followers and would get an insane viewership. He was absolutely on fire. At the same time though, if you knew anything about Tenz, then you'd know that he had a girlfriend, Kyedae. They were together since before Valorant even came out, ever since 2019. They had dated for a few weeks and moved in together when they were both just 17 years old. And just like how Tenz blew up to astronomical levels, Kyedae would also experience her own form of success by collaborating with him. These clips from their collabs would go absolutely mega viral on all platforms, showing a couple that's absolutely in love with each other while also getting to see Tenz, the #1 Valorant player, teaching his girlfriend how to play Valorant when she's never really played first-person shooters before. Many of these clips would be posted on Kyedae's personal TikTok, and they'd get tens of millions of views. She has over 2 million followers and 100 million likes on this platform. And it goes without saying that some of her top clips on her page always involved Tenz. She would start streaming in November of 2020, a few months after Valorant's closed beta would launch. And within her first month, she would have an average view count of 2,800 viewers, as well as gaining 75,000 followers. Her fame was instant, but it wouldn't stop there. She'd keep growing at an insane pace. People couldn't get enough of her and Tenz. I mean, look at this video, right? Tenz versus Kyedae Valorant 1v1 rematch. 11 million views. There will be an insane amount of clipper channels taking clips from their streams of their interactions, getting millions of views as well. They were everywhere. Saying that these two were one of the biggest content creator couples on the planet was not an understatement at this point. So while Tenz was at the top esports team for Valorant, Kyedae would get her own opportunities as well, joining 100 Thieves, one of the most well-known content creator orgs on the planet. And while yes, some people would argue that she could have never made it this far if it wasn't for her boyfriend, it's not like she ever said the opposite. She understood that she was in a very lucky position and would say so herself in an interview with 100 Thieves. Watch.
A few other clips went viral. It was kind of like an overnight thing where a few thousand people started watching me, and I would just like talk, and Tyson and I would just do some like challenge videos and other things. And I'm very thankful for the situation I'm in where I didn't like grind those hours like a lot of streamers do that totally deserve this. I'm not saying I necessarily like deserve this, but it's been a journey and it's been definitely like a lot of fun.
This was the perfect storm, a couple going mega viral with everyone being completely obsessed over their relationship, all while staying wholesome and humble. Truly the epitome of content creator relationships. So at this point, as an avid fan, what else could you possibly ask for? Them tying the knot, of course. Around summer 2022, they would announce their engagement after having kept it secret for 8 months. The internet at this announcement, of course, exploded. Finally, this perfect couple is getting married. And I mean, you have to understand by this point, these two were seen as the ideal relationship for so many people. I'm talking millions. And to many, they were the personification of their goals when it came to finding a life partner. In other words, they were perfect, and people couldn't get enough of them. However, this image of perfection, of living the perfect life, would end pretty abruptly in 2023. Because you see, barely 6 months after announcing their engagement, Kyedae would unfortunately announce to the world that she's been diagnosed with acute myeloid leukemia. In other words, cancer. But cancer so aggressive that she only had a 25% chance of survival after 5 years. This was a shock to pretty much anyone, Kyedae included. And many couldn't believe that this perfect relationship was now at risk, that they faced danger. They didn't deserve this. The wave of support from the internet was immense. But it wasn't just strangers wishing her the best, it was also her content creator friends. Many male content creators, including Miskif, yes, I know this aged very badly, would shave their head in support of her because she was going to undergo chemotherapy and was about to lose all her hair. This was a very sweet gesture. However, one content creator here stood out, and it was 39Daff. She was the only content creator friend of Kyedae who was a woman that shaved her entire head in support of her. And the reason why I'm highlighting this is because it's very significant. When you're a guy and shave your head, you don't really care. You just wait a month and your hair's back. You can wear a cap, you can wear a beanie. It's all good. When you're a woman though, shaving your entire head off like this is like losing a part of yourself. And yet here she was doing it effortlessly for her friend. It really showed just how amazing Kyedae was. Not only was she the perfect girlfriend, she also had the perfect friends. For months, people would keep up with Kyedae and her updates, and by September 2023, many celebrated when she would announce that she was finally done with chemotherapy. Her hair could finally grow back now. She would, however, specify the cancer wasn't completely gone. She would undergo other treatments, but for now, she's happy because she can finally grow her hair back. But just as things were finally starting to look up for her, the other person in this relationship was going through their own personal hell. 2023 would be Tenz's worst year on record when it came to the esports scene of Valorant. This once great player was starting to be seen as overrated, as someone who was taking up a slot in the top team for no reason. His performance was tanking, and the online criticism was reaching unprecedented levels. I mean, look at this video right here. Why everybody hates the face of Valorant, sitting at 1.1 million views. And I mean, no wonder, right? His fiancée had just been diagnosed with a very aggressive form of cancer, and who knows what he was going through mentally. But even with all of that, he wouldn't give up. He'd persevere, and the next year, in 2024, he'd managed to win his second Valorant World Championship with his team. It seemed like Tenz and this current roster were working very well together, and he was back. This is why it was so shocking for the entire community to see that barely a few months later, on September 2024, he would announce that he wasn't just quitting Sentinels, he was retiring from competitive play. For years, he was seen as the face of Valorant, and there he was, leaving at the top of his game. The Valorant community was in absolute shambles, and many theories were being spread around as to why he left, one of them being that he needs to take care of his girlfriend. However, people would ask him why he retired multiple times on his stream, and he would answer it. He was grateful for the competitive scene and what he had experienced, but it wasn't for him anymore. He was losing passion for the game, and on top of that, he wanted to focus on other things in life. It was taking up all his time. And finally, when it came to the money, he was making way more just streaming, so it didn't really make sense to just focus on a game that you weren't passionate about anymore on the pro level. Additionally, he would make sure to mention that in 2023, when he was going through his worst career performance, he was going to quit. But Kyedae told him, please, just give it one more year, which made him eventually win his second major. Watch it for yourself.
Believe it or not, I would have retired last year if it wasn't for Kyedae. I said to myself, like, I'm just gonna like retire. And Kyedae said, no, like, trust me, like, stick it out 1 year just for me. And 2023 was such a low point for like my Valorant career. She like told me straight out that there's only up from here. That was the reason that I have played the 2024 season. Honestly, if it wasn't for Kyedae convinced me to do 1 more year, I would have never been a part of the Madrid winning roster. I wouldn't have a redemption within champs and get a top 4 finish within the team. So yeah, it's been an awesome ride.
So there you have it. This was not only a perfect couple, they were both perfect and relatable. They, much like the average person, had issues, they had challenges, but through their power of perfect love, they were able to overcome it together, further reinforcing the fact that they were the perfect standard for any relationship, and making many of their fans, some that just found them recently, root for them. By this point, they were bigger than ever. However, after Tenz's retirement from the pro scene, the on-stream interactions of this couple would reduce itself significantly. And the last major news that we'd hear from them would be on April 2025 when Kyedae would announce that she was done with streaming. Watch.
Alrighty everyone, I probably won't be back to streaming for a while. Or if you do see me, it'll just be randomly every once in a while. But yeah, I'm kind of done with streaming, so bye guys.
This was definitely sudden, and it did spark some rumors as to why she was doing this. Was she focusing on something else? Was her cancer getting worse? You see, for most people, they moved on. They watched someone else, they got back to their job, their actual life. But for a number of people, this simply wasn't enough. They wanted more, and they were about to do everything possible to acquire more information about Kyedae and Tenz's personal lives. And this was partly made possible due to the fact that both Tenz and Kyedae associated with a specific friend group that had some extremely and worryingly parasocial fans. Okay, so here's the deal. For the longest time when it came to Twitch content creation, the status quo involved 2 major groups of people that controlled most viewership. They were divided between 2 cities in the US, the first one being Los Angeles and the second one being Austin. The latter had OTK. If you were a streamer in Austin of any significant size, you couldn't avoid associating with these people. These were the people that you worshipped, hoping to get more opportunities out of. They were known as edgy, politically incorrect, and the opposite of being brand friendly. Some of their top creators at the time were Asmongold, Emiru, and Miskiff, as well as Soda Poppin'. On the other hand though, in Los Angeles, you had offline TV, otherwise known as OTV. This included content creators such as Scara, Pokimane, Disguised Toast, Lily Pichu, and as you might have guessed, they were the complete opposite of OTK. They were wholesome, very politically correct, and extremely brand friendly. Chances were that if you were a substantial content creator who lived in LA, then this group of friends had to have been in your circle. This is why their channel was called Offline TV and Friends. They very regularly featured people outside of OTV that happened to live in LA that were their friends. And while I'm sure that hanging out with OTV must have been an amazing experience, you'd very quickly realize that just by associating with them, you were also associating with a small portion of their fan base that was mentally ill and extremely parasocial. Here's an example. Disguised Toast is one of the more prominent members of OTV. At some point, he would date another content creator by the name of X Chocobars. This was a well-known fact as they would publicly announce it to their community. However, to some people, it simply wasn't enough seeing them interacting on stream. They wanted more. And so in 2018, Disguised Toast would uncover a shocking revelation. There were multiple, not 1 or 2, multiple Discord servers that were actively stalking him and his girlfriend, tracking their every move, following them, and taking pictures as well as videos of them whenever they would hang out together. Seeing them on stream, interacting in content simply wasn't enough. They wanted to be part of their private lives. Every second of their lives was content, whether they liked it or not. It was an egregious breach of their privacy. It absolutely shocked the streaming world at the time. No one deserves this happening to them. The problem was, though, that OTV didn't really know how to set proper boundaries. Being brand friendly and politically correct comes at a huge cost sometimes. One of them being the fact that you are very easily bullied by just about anyone who gets a viral post on Twitter. For example, in December 2023, Skaro would make a fairly harmless joke to one of his friends. Someone random would make a post on Twitter saying that it was racially charged, that it was disgusting, that it was racist to an entire race of people, and instead of putting his foot down saying, dude, this is my friend and we're comfortable, we have our own boundaries, he apologized as if he murdered someone. One of the first most important rules of content creation is when you give an inch, people will ask for a mile, and that's exactly how OTV treated their community. They treated them like their overlords, which meant that unfortunately, inevitably, boundaries were never going to be respected. This is where the subreddit OTV Girls Feet comes— wait, no, that's the wrong subreddit. Wait, whoa. Anyway, this is where the subreddit OTV and Friends Rumors comes in. With over 68,000 weekly visitors, it has become one of the most parasocial forums to keep up with the OTV gang as well as their friends. These people will watch every single piece of content produced by both OTV and their friends, whether it be podcasts, vlogs, streams, all in the hopes of finding clues or hints about what their friends are up to. If a streamer's on a random podcast, they'll watch it. If that streamer hints that, I don't know, they went on a trip with another streamer from OTV, they would come to this subreddit, make a post about it, and theorize as to what that trip might have been, who might have been there, what could they have done. And that's when the rumors truly start spreading like wildfire. They pretty much tracked your every move. So it was only natural that they'd find it extremely suspicious that Kyedae, at the end of December 2025, would private her entire Instagram page. On January 3rd, someone would make a post saying, Tenz and Kyedae broke up late 2025, early 2026. Little Birdie told me that they split a few days back. Kyedae hasn't said or confirmed anything. She went MIA and deleted all pictures on her Instagram. Rip to everyone who believed in their love, if they're not getting back together. Someone would ask, who's your birdie? Another proof? To which that person would say, another streamer that also hangs out with them. I'm watching Tenz stream right now and he isn't wearing any rings. He deleted his engagement photos today too. Kyedae updated her bio on Instagram to, I'm just currently figuring out my Insta feed lol, don't worry guys, smiley face. But it's weird that Tenz deleted their engagement photos. And when it came to her Instagram, this person wasn't lying. After she had privated all her posts and she saw people starting to make up rumors, she made sure to include this in her bio saying, I'm just currently figuring out my Insta feed, lol, don't worry guys. But by then it was too late, and you'd think that someone as prominent as Kyedae would understand that. On January 14th, 2026, this post would randomly go viral on Twitter with over 5 million views. It would simply say, wait, did Tenz and Kyedae actually break up? ? This right here was the real super spreader event, prompting others to start posting the same screenshot that was shared on Reddit, showing the fact that Kyedae had no more posts, and even going as far as checking Sakura's streams, Kyedae's sister, in which she makes an appearance, and they'd noticed that she didn't have her engagement ring on her finger. Over the next 2 weeks during January 2026, these rumors would start spreading very quickly, and by January 26th, someone would make this post on the subreddit OTV and Friends Drama, a subreddit similar to OTV and Friends Rumors that also gets a sizable amount of weekly visitors, sitting at 51,000. It would say, recent rumors regarding a potential breakup didn't come from nowhere. And here they had 5 points. The first one being, initially at first, Kyedae completely cleansed her Insta feed. Some people say that she removed the engagement post first and then everything on her page after, can't confirm however. The second point, Tenz had also removed every post except one with Kyedae on Instagram. The engagement post was also unpinned from his Twitter profile. Edit, the last post with Kyedae has now been deleted. The third point, Tenz had unfollowed her on Instagram a month ago and then refollowed her a bit after. Can't confirm if the same had happened on Twitter. The fourth point, Tenz had spent the holidays alone. Kyedae was in Vancouver. They had always, the past years prior, spent the holidays together with their families in Canada. And finally, the fifth point, neither Tenz or Kyedae have been wearing their engagement rings in the past month. They had always been wearing their engagement rings on stream for the past 4 years. This is probably the biggest evidence something happened. Since the rumor blew up a bit on Twitter, Tenz and Kyedae have not publicly confirmed or denied anything. Tenz, a few days ago, since recently coming from a break, said he has some things to figure out. Tenz was streaming himself playing Valorant with Kyedae on December 7th and then took a break and returned to streaming on the 17th with no engagement ring that he hasn't worn since. If they did indeed break up or go on a break, something happened in those 10 days. Also, considering the brief Instagram unfollow from Tenz around the same time span, whatever happened in those 10 days might have ended what was nearly a 7-year relationship. This post would get a lot of upvotes, over 300 comments, and eventually would be deleted due to the incredible attention it was getting. People would try to rummage clips from past streams to confirm these theories. On his December 7th stream, he not only was wearing his ring, he was also on a call with Kyedae where she was asking him, hey, can you play the game I like? And he'd be saying, when we move, which made it seem like they were going to move somewhere together. They were going to move to a different house. But then when he came back on December 17th, he wasn't wearing a ring and he was saying, when I move, signaling that he wasn't moving with her anymore. But let's take a step back for a second. Let's go back to the initial post we saw from January 3rd, 2026, about this person and their little birdie. One Parasocial fan would say, I don't know, man, is Kyedae dating John, 39daph's ex? Look at this VOD and check 37 minutes, 15 seconds. This would be a timestamp from an almost 12-hour stream. I'm telling you, man, you don't want to mess with Parasocial fans. In it, we can see Fuslie, someone who's known to be in the OTV and Friends circle of friends, talking about a trip she had with Kyedae and another man named John. The stream would be on January 19th, 2026, and the trip itself would be after December 7th, so during the time in which she broke up with Tenz. Watch for yourself.
Yes, I was with John Choi and Kyedae. We went to get, what did we get? We got sushi, we got we got coffee, yeah, and then it was a good little time.
It really is incredible to me how in a 12-hour VOD, someone just took these 10 seconds to try and prove to the world that their theory is correct. And it was a significant theory. You see, John Choi is none other than 39daph's ex. Yes, the same woman who shaved her head in support of Kyedae's cancer battle. This was also made even more significant because on the OTV and Friends Rumors subreddit, someone would make a post on September 27th, 2025 saying, Daph and Kyedae unfollow each other after Kyedae starts hanging out with Daph's ex, John Choi. This post would contain a picture of both Kyedae and John hanging out in some island. And this had gotten very dangerous because when it came to the Parasocial viewers, they didn't need proof that both Kyedae and Tenz broke up. They already had it. They had already moved on as to finding a reason why this breakup happened, why this perfect couple separated, and they were already convinced that it was because Kyedae cheated. To them, there was enough proof. Why else would 39daph and Kyedae unfollow each other when they literally were the closest friends? And so, barely a few weeks after these rumors had truly caught on fire, many of these Parasocial viewers would be extremely vindicated once Kyedae finally speaks out on what's going on between her and Tenz. What would follow after would be one of the most catastrophic incidents involving a public couple breaking up. On February 8th, 2026, Kyedae would post a statement saying, hey everybody, Tyson and I feel ready to share some personal news, Tyson being Tenz. We've actually been broken up for quite some time now. Toward the end of our relationship, we came to a realization that wasn't easy to accept. We had stopped growing as individuals. For most of our relationship, we did everything together. Work together, hobbies and interests together, pretty much everything together. We've even joked in the past that although we were together for 6 years, it felt like at least 30. We moved in together just weeks after meeting, and from ages 17 to 24, that was all we knew. Over time, it became clear that we needed space to grow into our own people separately. We know the internet often looks for the tea, but the truth is simple. We grew apart. There was no wrongdoing, no resentment, and no single event that caused this. We still deeply care about each other and genuinely want the best for one another. We're also incredibly grateful for the time and life we shared together. Thank you for respecting our privacy. She would then reply to herself with an image of Tenz, writing the statement on paper, saying, this was us cooking it up at the park today, LMAO, and I can already predict the comments because of the use of M dashes in the tweet. Don't piss me off, we didn't use AI. Tenz, on the other hand, wouldn't say anything. He would just change his profile picture to a lonely penguin and would simply retweet the statement that Kyedae had made. Now look, they were trying to be lighthearted, humorous even. They really wanted everyone to know that there was no problems. This was amicable, there was no tea, no controversy, and they simply wanted to move on. The problem though was that, as I said, people had already made up their minds. They knew about this breakup, but now they wanted to know why. And this whole idea that this was amicable, that there was no resentment or any issues, that simply wasn't gonna cut it. This post would end up getting over 54 million views with over 6,800 replies, and I can tell you right now, a huge chunk of them are not positive. Many of the top replies were either losing hope in the fact that true love exists, or were just simply shitting on Kyedae. This is the most liked reply other than Kyedae's own reply, saying, so he stuck by you during tough times and when it got better you broke up with him? That's crazy. Or how about this one? Welcome to the gym, Tenz. Oh, and of course we can't forget that one. Kyedae wants a hoe phase. She had just posted this post, but the rumors were running so rampant, people already made up their minds that she got bombarded with unprecedented hate. These, of course, were only the replies. The quote tweets were a completely different story. Like this one, with almost 1 million views and 31,000 likes. Grew apart from the one person who held it down when you had cancer. How about this one? 2.4 million views, 58,000 likes. Not gonna lie, if I spent 6 years with someone, moved in, did everything with them, and helped them when they got cancer just to break up because she grew out of the relationship, I'm straight up killing myself. Now, of course, this isn't to say that everyone was hating on her. Even though they weren't as loud and weren't as numerous, some still sided with her and Tenz. Like this post saying, Tenz and Kyedae, we've been dating since we were 17 and grew apart now that we're in our mid-20s and different people. Dumbest fuckers ever. Wow. Poor Tenz, bro, time to hit the gym, bro. Keep your head up. I hate women. She dumped him even though he stayed when she had cancer. Regardless though, for many of the loudest voices on Twitter, this was about a man who gave everything to a woman and she let him down, just like every woman does. This post says it very clearly. Men can give a girl the world just for her to say, did I ask you to do that? But hey, Kyedae and Tenz were truly trying their best here to make this lighthearted and not seem as serious as it is. Kyedae would go back to the post in which Tenz announced that they finally got engaged, and even though it was unpinned, she made a comment saying, this did not age well, comments incoming, LMAO, to which Tenz replied with, literally did not age well, skull emoji. This was their attempt to be lighthearted, I guess. But to the people that had a problem with their breakup, this felt nasty. With this post saying, imagine making this post and making a joke in the post where your ex posted your anniversary plus engagement. Why? Just leave it. I question your sincerity. It feels nasty. Look, Kyedae had been in some controversies before this, okay? Nothing major by any means, but because of her size, it was definitely bigger than you would expect. This, however, was the most hate she had ever received ever since she started online activities. It was absolutely merciless. So much so that barely a day after her post, Tenz would take it upon himself to make his own post defending her, saying, hey everyone, I've been seeing a lot of really weird posts about Kyedae and me that are creating false narratives and spreading unnecessary hate. It's really disheartening to see. We parted on completely mutual terms and we still care deeply about each other. It honestly hurts so much to see her being attacked when we both supported each other through insanely difficult times. I also quit playing pro of my own accord and was never influenced by her to quit. This was a rumor going around, by the way, that he had given her everything, even his pro career, just to support her cancer battle. Anyway, he continues, people's goals can change over time, and that is just what happened with me. In a healthy relationship, there should never be comparisons about who sacrificed more or gave more. That mindset is immature and helps nobody. All I ask is that you please respect Kyedae as a person and respect the decision we made together. This kind of pointless drama is exactly why having a relationship in the public eye can be so draining. She is also still dealing with ongoing health issues, which makes the negativity being spread even more heartbreaking and unfair. Thank you for understanding, and once again, please respect our decision. This post would also get an insane amount of attention, naturally, since everyone was talking about it. And I do want to highlight the fact that he was saying she is still also dealing with ongoing health issues. That's because by this point, people were insinuating that she had beaten cancer, and that because she beat it, she was finally ready to let Tenz go from her life after he supported her, when that wasn't true. But even though this hate against Kyedae stemmed from people quote-unquote defending Tenz, the victim, this post did not help at all. People were not having it. The most liked comment in the replies would say, I'm not saying the hate is justified or anything, but a mutual breakup doesn't actually exist and nobody thinks so. Or how about this guy? Tenz still protecting her out of love even though she broke his heart. The same person would call her evil and would post a random TikTok comment that pretty much was saying their theory about this. About how he said on stream that he was having a rough week, that he was all alone. Meanwhile, Kyedae was hanging out with her sister and friends, making it seem like he was abandoned. There's even one guy here saying, here's your answer, bro. Even a cold-hearted person will have no choice but to say something about this. Linking an image of an AI summary, saying that as part of Kyedae's treatment, she underwent a bone marrow transplant which was successfully performed using donor cells from her partner, Tenz. Guys, you have to understand, a bone marrow transplant is one hell of a procedure. It's not like a blood donation. There's a 1 in 1 million chance that you even match the other person in order to donate to them, and the symptoms are not very straightforward. Muscle pain, bone pain, headache, fatigue, nausea, etc., etc. And yet, the only time Kyedae said anything after her post was here, saying, where the fuck are you even getting this from? He has never donated me bone marrow. I'm genuinely getting irritated reading lies. This was a complete fabrication from the AI this person was using. And yet, even though she came out to say this person would still have the gall to reply saying, oh, people aren't buying that. Look, regardless of what you might think so far, It was obvious. Both Kyedae and Tenz were in a situation that truly warranted the saying, damned if you do, damned if you don't. You say something, you get shat on. You don't, you'll get shat on anyway. The rumor mill had totally spread out of control, and people weren't simply going to believe that this was amicable, that nothing happened behind the scenes. This is also where the post I had shown you on Reddit would start to spread like wildfire on Twitter. This tweet got close to 10 million views, and they'd link both the post where Daph and Kyedae unfollowed each other because Kyedae was hanging out with Daph's ex, as well as the other 5-point post that was talking about Tenz and Kyedae's breakup. So now it wasn't just about misinformation like him giving his bone marrow to her, it was also about cheating, right? Getting cheated on by the girl you gave your bone marrow to has to be the most gut-wrenching shit imaginable. People had already made up their minds here. I mean, people would take it even a step further, saying this John Choi guy is screwing all these big female streamers like Extra Emily, because he also dated her, 39 Daph, because he's her ex, and now Kyedae, when all these girls used to be friends, cold world. So now this guy was a player who couldn't keep his sausage in his pants and who was literally jumping from bed to bed. This had gotten so out of control that Tenz directly quote tweeted that post we just saw of those two Reddit posts and said, okay, this is genuinely disgusting that people are still spitting out bullshit onto the timeline. There's some stuff I'm going to clear up since people are just throwing around blind hate to push a narrative that is non-existent. John is a friend of both mine and Kyedae. Just because they hung out on a trip that I was supposed to come out on but had to cancel last minute with one of my best friends from high school there with them, who also is conveniently cropped out of the photo to once again push this crazy cheating story, is fucking wild. Maybe before people start speculating things in a relationship they have absolutely nothing to do with, they should focus on fixing their own insecurities so it's not projected outwards. Also, I have absolutely no clue how people started saying I donated bone marrow to her when I most definitely did not. I legitimately cannot tell if this type of shit is just rage bait, but it's genuinely pretty hard for me to get emotionally charged like this. So obviously by now, these two were expecting some sort of backlash for breaking off one of the most popular content creation relationships in history, but they got completely and utterly sucker punched in the face when they realized just how much the hate was rampant. They weren't expecting this level of controversy. And while some people were wishing them the best and supporting them, others were still here to say, this is some cuck post for sure. So now he went from a victim to a cuck. But here's the deal. Objectively speaking, he truly wasn't wrong about this picture that was being spread everywhere. He was saying it was cropped, but if you Google image search it, it's almost impossible to find the original image. This is how quickly this had spread. There was no source to the original. I had to go to John Choi's personal Instagram to find it. This was the only way. And as we can see, Tenz wasn't lying. His best friend was there. In fact, he was the guy taking this selfie. But still, just because of this picture, by the way, there are like over a dozen pictures in this. It's a photo dump. All the comments here are asking, you and Kyedae dating? Making fun of the fact that they're cheating, and of course the fact that he's suspicious. Additionally, people would be spreading around this image, this chat log of Kyedae on this trip saying, I'm sorry LMAO, not my fault LMAO, I'm stuck here for a day, and John got the time wrong. Me and Suvan missed the last boat, Tyson, don't be mad. This was Kyedae typing in Tenz's chat back in September 2025, just a couple of months before they had broken up. It was in reference to how she had missed the boat along with John and Suvan during their trip that was displayed in this image, forcing her to spend one more day with them. To the people who were calling Kyedae a cheater, this was evidence that Kyedae was starting to cheat on Tenz, because why else would she say, please don't be mad? In reality though, if we want to be objective, she was maybe saying this because she knows he would worry, and she didn't want him to get worried over their lack of responsibility. In the end though, it's up to you to decide. The final thing that Tyson or Tenz would say during this controversy would be, playing esports made me immune to feeling anything from internet hate. To the people still projecting, please interact with this tweet so I can collect some Twitter revenue and pop champagne tonight in honor of you. Heart emoji. And again, the top replies here are calling him a cuck. Holy cuckfest. Bro got cucked so hard he has to pretend he's happy for the fans. I'm pretty sure I have to censor that word because YouTube hates it, but I'm sure you know what a cuck is. C-U-C-K. The second most liked reply would be, the crash out continues because your girl clapped another man. These people were relentless. Tenz was trying his best to keep his composure, to act calm and collected. But the Parasocials would take it a step further, and they'd find out through their own crazy research that he had not taken this breakup well at all when it first happened back in December. On the OTV and Friends drama subreddit, someone would make a post about how Tenz had created a new secret Instagram and Twitter account purely to follow a woman on December 21st that he met at a UC Davis party that was 6 hours from Los Angeles. These accounts were not secret because they were called Not Tyson. Here's the timeline of events. They estimate that the breakup happened around December 8th to 15th. On December 17th, he didn't have his ring on stream. On December 20th, he streamed again and said he was going to a party with friends. Eyewitnesses report that they saw Tenz at UC Davis in the dorm hallways at 2 a.m. on December 21st, after the party. On January 5th or 6th, he would make secret Instagram and Twitter accounts called Not Tyson, and he would only have one person he'd follow, who was a girl that he had met at UC Davis. The Parasocials went as far as stalking this woman, going to her Instagram page and interacting with it so much to the point where she now privated it. However, that didn't stop someone from that same subreddit from posting an image of her and her username. Of course, I'm censoring it for the sake of her privacy, right? But I'm just saying it's there. Complete and utter disregard to the privacy of someone who has nothing to do with this. And the reason why some people bothered to mention this was because they wanted to show that Tyson wasn't taking this well, that he needed a rebound because of how heartbroken he was, that it wasn't his decision. In the end though, who knows? Up to you to decide. Look, by this point, Tenz had tried his absolute best to cover for his ex that he still cared for, but it didn't matter. This post has over 1.6 million views, 61,000 likes, saying, ending a 6-year relationship on just messages after he sacrificed his career for you and stayed loyal. Women are evil, bro. Evil. This post was made quote tweeting a clip that had nothing to do with this. It was literally the clip I told you about before, where Kyedae was asking Tenz, hey, can you play that game I like? And him saying yes when we move. There is no indication, there was nothing that told us that they broke up over text. Nothing. And at this point, I have to believe that this post was made purely to farm views and impressions so that they can get paid. I don't have another explanation over this. This had gotten so out of control that 39daph had to quote tweet Tenz tweet saying, please don't use me to fuel this false narrative. Me and Kyedae's falling out had nothing to do with John and was over an unrelated issue we didn't see eye to eye on last year. They've been good friends with each other and I have no issues with that or with them. I don't like this heavy mischaracterization of others to push some nonsensical story. Yes, I'm no longer involved in their lives, but they are not deserving of the onslaught of slanderous dogpiling. John is not a homewrecker and Kyedae never did anything malicious. That's all. So even 39daph, someone who had unfollowed Kyedae, who had stopped being her friend around the end of 2025, was coming out here to defend them. She couldn't even stand seeing this. But of course, again, it didn't matter what anyone said. The top liked replies here are, it's okay. John Choi cracked both of you and it's okay. Thanks for reminding us that you fell out with Kyedae also because of John. Damn. They paid you off too. No, this has to be rage bait, dude. Like even objectively, this has to be rage bait. So even 39daph coming in for defense wasn't doing much. So as you can imagine, when John Choi himself was forced to make a statement, this also didn't change much either. He'd come out to say, no, I'm not dating Kyedae and I have never hung out with her outside of a group setting. Stop cropping photos to make it look like we have. Tyson is a friend and has stated himself that these rumors are false, so please stop sending me death threats on his behalf. Heart emoji. You want to guess what the most liked reply said? Crazy what Kyedae is forcing all her men to post. John Choi would reply to his post, quote tweeting what Tenz said, as well as link an image saying 21% of adults in the US are illiterate in 2024. 54% of adults have a literacy below a 6th grade level. 20% are below 5th grade level. Low levels of literacy cost the US up to $2.2 trillion per year. The reply right under that says, sure buddy, laughing emoji, showing John Choi wearing the same beanie that Kyedae's wearing, using it as proof that they're in a relationship. I do have to say though, that the top reply to this post ratioed it over 6 times and said, I'm wearing the same shoes your mother wears, that must mean I'm fucking her. In any case, now we had reached the point where everyone, whether they wanted to be involved or not with this breakup, had to make some sort of a statement. By this point, it was February 10th, barely 48 hours had passed since the initial breakup post from Kyedae, and things had devolved to a level that had not been seen before, especially for an amicable breakup. But again, as you might have surmised by now, that didn't matter. Even after Tenz tweets, 39daphs, John Choi's, everything, it didn't matter. People were still peddling the idea that she broke up with him over text, that it wasn't mutual, and there's no such thing as mutual breakups. It's a fantasy, and the vast majority is pushed by the woman. Soon you'd start to see posts like this saying, maybe the cancer will come back. That would be funny. And now look, as disturbing as that post is, I mean seriously, wishing for cancer to come back over something like this is wild. This again underscores the need for me to emphasize that Kyedae had not in any way defeated the cancer by now. This was another piece of misinformation that was being peddled like it's the truth. This chick literally still had cancer, but people were acting like she defeated it. And there was no shortage of vile comments like this, whether it was directed at Kyedae or Tenz, calling him a cuck and a million other things. And then just as you thought that maybe things were finally about to die down, maybe we could finally move on from this very stupid, incredibly blown out of proportion drama, a self-admitted pedophile would step into the ring. And he would, for some reason, make it a million times worse. Hunter Mims, otherwise known as 6CS, was a pro Valorant player. He actually was on the same exact team as Tenz and played with him as a teammate in the Sentinels team. However, he'd be kicked out of the team in 2023 when he'd be arrested following an altercation at a car dealership. A few months later, he'd be arrested again, this time for trespassing on that same car dealership. His mugshot would of course be shared all over the internet, and it was very obvious through his actions and his very erratic, crazy tweets that this person was deeply unwell. Something had happened. It was also deeply painful for his friends and people who knew him, with Shazam, an ex-Counter-Strike pro and someone who's played in the Valorant pro scene, tweeting this out after his second arrest. "Hey guys, I have Sick blocked so I can make this tweet. He's not himself right now. Please try your best to ignore his tweets and erratic behavior for now. I promise this isn't who he is. Thanks for being understanding." In fact, on top of this, the Sentinel's CEO would also promise to be in contact with his family in order to try and help him. But it seemed like no matter what they did, Sick didn't want to be helped. And unfortunately, it would get way worse. Sick would go on the website known as ePal, where you can hire people, mostly women, to play video games with you, and that's exactly what he'd do. Except they'd have a very disturbing conversation where he would pretty much admit that he was attracted to minors. This would prompt the person with him to start recording and share it online so that people can be aware that this man is a freak. This would all be revealed in the beginning of 2025. Watch for yourself.
And of course, like too young, like, yeah, like 12, 13, 14, maybe, I don't know. Like that's really bad. And even, of course, I'm 27, so it's bad no matter what. So I won't justify it. I'm just still telling my mindset. Like, and I'm not a violent person. I'm not a mean person. I'm not a rude person. I don't do drugs. I don't really drink alcohol. I don't fucking get mad. Like, I don't insult people. I'm pretty like stable guy.
So here he was, pretty much admitting to someone he had just met that he's into 12-year-olds, 13-year-olds, 14-year-olds. He knew that this was very bad because he's 27 and tried to downplay it by saying he's not a violent person, he doesn't do drugs, etc., etc. Look, one thing was obvious. This self-admitted pedophile was a very deeply disturbed person, and he so badly needed help. And it's not like there was any shortage of it, it just seemed like he was refusing it. In any case, as this was all happening, he would decide to join in on the dogpiling of Kyedae and Tenz breaking up. Again, Tenz used to be one of his teammates. He'd say, "You know what I don't understand, and this is just generally speaking, how can people say, the people involved in this situation were forced to make a statement when they're engagement baiting about their own drama to begin with? You can't pick the kind of attention you get." So here he'd be linking a now apparently deleted tweet of John Choi where he was using that same picture with the frog beanie, as well as adding red eyes to himself, as well as the picture where Kyedae was trying to be lighthearted, making fun of the situation on the engagement post. Seeing that this guy used to be a friend of Tenz, this of course got a lot of attention, reaching almost 1 million views. However, what was really interesting here is that once 39daph was made aware of its existence, she took it upon herself to reply to it, saying, "Shut the fuck up." This is when Sick would say, "Ah yes, a very logical and in-depth response, classic rage from you. Don't make me put your friend on blast, Daph, because I easily can. Who or what exactly are you trying to defend here? I thought you didn't talk to these people anymore." She'd say, "Go ahead, it's not like it's a secret. Most people distance from you as a result of your erratic, unsocial behavior the past few years. I don't talk to these people, but that doesn't mean I don't find it wrong to instigate the insane mob further. Your words have weight as an ex-teammate. Delusional people are sourcing your suspicions founded on nothing to connect unrelated dots. Godspeed." Sick would then say, "Okay, I think you're just being a little emotional right now, but I'll go ahead and spill the beans. I'm sure Kyedae will be very grateful for you. Give me 15 minutes. I wasn't instigating anything, nor was I raising suspicions. If you took one moment to read, you would see that." This is when Daph would say, "In 5 minutes, I better see the spiciest beans of my life." This is when shit would truly get real. So much so that it would become a trending topic on Twitter, with the title, "Sick and 39daph trade serious accusations in Kyedae Tenz breakup drama." He would quote tweet one of 39daph's replies to him and say, "Daph decided to attack me personally over her own friend's engagement baiting on the timeline, so here it is. Kyedae told me multiple times in multiple ways that she wanted to experiment with other men, and that was quite some time ago, so I can only imagine what she acted on." Anyone who thinks I'm lying about this can simply go back in time. Kyedae literally sat down with me in Brazil one-on-one at a restaurant, and she admitted to this when she snaked me out to an ex-girlfriend. But I promise you she wanted to cheat for years that's a fact. He would then link a couple of images of their DMs, saying, this is the sit down I had with her that I'm referring to, by the way. We talked about many personal things on both ends. Difference is I never went behind her back, but I know what kind of person she can be behind the camera, and clearly someone has to say something. So this is back in February 2023, and here we can see Kyedae saying, I hope you understand that after the conversation with you that I had at lunch, I talked to Tyson. Sick would say, I wish you the best of luck, my friend. Yes, of course, don't mind. To which she said, and we came to a consensus to talk to Karis. This was during the time that everything was already aired out on Twitter. To which he'd say what you want, yes. She'd then say, I called her asking her side of the story, and no, I'm not going to just say what I want. Some of the conversation will be cut off here, and then we'd find ourselves with Kyedae saying, Hunter, you aren't a good person, but you're making this worse on yourself. You tried cheating on Karis before Berlin. You've said the N-word multiple times in public in front of me, Tarek, and Tyson. All these things could get you easily canceled, and this isn't something I fucking want. This is when he'd reply with, okay, I don't know anything, do it, man. To which she said, no, I won't be doing that. He would then say, for those unaware, all of this on my end has already been addressed, thanks to her yapping about it mostly, so I don't mind self-reporting to stir the pot, obviously. So what are these messages exactly, other than the fact that they prove that he cheated and also said the N-word? This wasn't even the first time that he showed these DMs. He actually showed all of them to completion on stream around 2023. Retake has a great video explaining all this with the title, What Happened to Sick? In a nutshell, during the major in 2023, he wasn't allowed in to support his teammates. He couldn't even go and watch. Even though he was out of the team's roster, he couldn't even go inside to watch the games and support them. This would make him start posting some erratic tweets, with many fans being concerned over his mental health. It didn't seem like he was doing well at all. This, of course, all happened after the first time he got arrested. And then shortly afterwards, during all this, Karis, his then girlfriend, would announce on Twitter that she was breaking up with him because he had flown out a random girl to Brazil after he had a small fight with her, saying that he was lying, telling everyone that they were in an open relationship when that wasn't the case. People were also aware that he had a one-on-one dinner with Kyedae. She was one of the only people who was willing to talk to him when he couldn't get into the venue. And this is when Sick's ex-girlfriend would also add that Kyedae told her that Hunter made her uncomfortable, which made many people theorize that, oh, did he actually try to hit on her? Did he try to do things to her? Months would pass, and after he would get arrested a second time, he would admit that there was something wrong with him and that he was going to go get therapy. Now that he was back, though, to Sick, this was about redemption and revenge. From his point of view, Kyedae had ruined his relationship, all while doing the same exact things that she accused him of doing, which was cheating, wanting to be non-monogamous. He'd even emphasized this in this series of tweets. One of the last things he'd say would be, Kyedae went behind my back and told people all kinds of things about me in the past. I'm tired of these women thinking they have immunity to criticism. I know how evil they can be, and it's right to call them out. I will provide more information later. He hasn't done so yet. Now look, objectively speaking, these DMs, they don't really prove anything. This is a drama that, as far as everyone was aware, was already solved in the past. And at the end of the day, it didn't really make him look good. It only made him look bad for people who weren't aware about these DMs. The only thing they proved is that, yes, he cheated and he said the N-word. And Kyedae, if anything, was one of the only people reaching out to him during his extremely erratic behavior. When 39daf would see this, she'd make fun of the fact that he had no proof, saying, you told me multiple times in the past you enjoyed sexting underage young girls. That was last year, so I can only imagine what you acted on. This was, of course, bait. And he would take it, saying, okay, now we are just lying. I have never had a conversation with you in my life. Shameless the lengths women go to try and cover for each other. Unlike your claims, I have had actual face-to-face conversations with Kyedae. Perhaps log off because getting caught in lies won't work. She would continue to bait him, and he would keep biting, with her saying, we did have some conversations face-to-face when we did org shoots together. You kept insisting you enjoyed them younger, but I told you that wasn't okay. To which he'd say, still trying to gaslight me. It's simply not true. I quite literally have never spoken to you about these things or anything. Keep coping and trying to deflect the actual issue at hand. Hell, even I'd join in on the fun and saying, you see, I would have believed you if Kyedae was a minor, but seeing that she is over the age of 15, it's impossible that you would have been interested enough to have a conversation. And to my surprise, he'd actually reply, but then would delete his tweet. You see, someone would say, I respect you a lot, Mujin, but despite all the potential evidence, you really don't think there's any chance of foul play? I'm asking you to be open-minded here. To which I would say, working on a video right now, and it'll cover all viewpoints objectively. But Sick is someone who admitted he liked minors, has been in jail, and is known to have erratic mood swings. It will be a major lapse in judgment to take anything he says seriously unless he has proof, which he didn't. That is simply an objective fact here. This is when he would reply to me before deleting his tweet very shortly afterwards, saying, in quotations, known to have erratic mood swings. So a period of a few months 3 years ago? Anyone who knows me knows I'm actually very logical and level-headed, and my streams prove that as well, by the way. To which someone replied with, didn't even bother arguing against the minors thing because you know it's over. Bro, he completely ignored this point. But look, to remain completely and entirely objective here, maybe he's saying the truth. Maybe what he's saying actually happened. But due to his past history and his very self-destructive behavior, it's very hard to take him seriously. Additionally, he doesn't have the proof he claimed to have. Saying that she told you multiple times, in multiple ways, I don't know how else she would have been able to express that she wanted to experiment with other men, is one hell of an accusation when someone is in a relationship. Especially seeing how outraged Kyedae was when she found out that Hunter was cheating on his girlfriend. But to the many people that had it out for Kyedae, to the many people who truly believed that she cheated, they saw all of this as a great manipulation tactic by Daph, Kyedae, and John to completely discredit someone saying the truth, like Sick, by calling him a pedophile, by using his background of erratic behavior and the fact that he landed in jail twice. His tweet calling out Daph has over 3.6 million views, over 13,000 likes. If anything, this only served as further proof that Kyedae was a whore. And that's the only thing that mattered. After seeing all the attention that he was receiving, Sick had no intention of backing down. In fact, he chose to double down. The next day he'd go live, reassure everyone that he's doing just fine. In fact, he's feeling the best he's ever felt, and would go into more detail as to what Kyedae told him specifically when they had that one-on-one talk in Brazil. Here's a couple of clips to show you. Watch.
Sick, you're clearly underworld. These people are in chat watching because they're finding you destroy yourself further. Seek help. Now projecting. See, that's what I mean. Projecting. Or rage bait. And Parasocial all in one. I've been streaming for over a year now, and I've been completely normal. But I promise you, in a conversation, it happened. Okay, she said she wanted to experiment with men. She said she wanted to experiment with other girls. She said, oh, Kyedae's, or not Kyedae, Tenz is too, like, what's the word? When, like, too, when you just want to have one partner. And he gets, like, too jealous. She literally said all that. Attached? No, there's like a term for when you want only one partner. I don't know. Monogamous, yeah. She literally said she said it like it wasn't normal. He's like, oh yeah, he's too monogamous for like me to be able to like experiment with other people. I'm like, yeah, sure.
So now he was more specific as to what he was saying. In his initial post, when he said she let me know multiple times in more ways than one that she wanted to experiment with other people, this is what he meant. This clip has 15,000 views and many of the comments are actually siding with him. The logic here is simple. Why would this guy lie when he has literally nothing to lose? He has no friendships to care for, he has no team to get kicked out of, and he's really selling the idea that he's never felt better. He's known to have no filter and very easily will admit terrible things about himself, like he did with that EPAL call where he was saying that he was attracted to minors. So why would he be lying about this today? On the next day, on February 13th, 2026, Sick would tweet again about this topic, this time saying, I've watched Tenz easily clutch 1 vs 5 in Valorant, but somehow he couldn't clutch a 6-year-long relationship. To be fair though, it's hard to win when the other team is cheating. This post would get over 4 million views, more than any post he's made so far. For the people who had a problem with Kyedae, Sick was becoming their representative, the voice of reason who knew the truth. At the same time though, one couldn't really deny that his behavior was becoming obsessive, creepy even, with how he was acting towards Kyedae. And there was a reason for that. He never hid the fact that he was somewhat obsessed with her. Back during May 2023, after being arrested for the second time, he'd go through her Instagram profile, liking every single post on stream in order to try and catch her attention. Watch for yourself.
But you know, okay, did I like this one already? No, I didn't. Okay, that's it. Wait, I like one more. She looks like that's pretty. I don't know. Anyways, I'll go back. What? Who the fuck is this? Okay, never mind. Fuck all this. I'm closing it all. Okay, that's enough. I could call her, but actually, I need her Discord. Is she streaming? She is. But how do we spam that? I need her Discord to call her. Can someone spam? I need your Discord. What? My message wasn't posted due to a conflict with Nature Mod. Hello?
So does he truly have a problem with her? Is there a problem with him mentally? And is he really doing this because he thinks it's the right thing, or because he's always had a crush on her and is happy to see her finally breaking up with Tenz? As you might have guessed by now, I'll let you come up with your own opinion. Just know though that barely before I was going to upload this video, he would make this comment on Twitter. Someone would reply to his post and say, "At this rate, I think you might want Kyedae." To which he would say, "So what if I do?" ? Whatever, man. This dude is the Kanye West of Valorant. That is a fact. But sick, causing so much damage wasn't the only thing that Kyedae and Tenz had to worry about, because the Parasocials would find something very interesting that was on none other than Tenz's own subreddit. Someone had made a thread back in October 22nd, 2023 with the title, "Kyedae cheating on Tenz." I saw Kyedae cheating on Tenz at TwitchCon. I swear I'm not lying. Believe me, she is a cheater. I saw it with my own eyes. Back then, this had 166 upvotes, 76 comments. Today, it has over 325 upvotes, 129 comments. People found it and started interacting with it, saying that this person was a messiah. Many of the comments left back then were doubting them. Now people are praising them. It seemed like no matter what Kyedae could ever do, no matter what Tenz could ever do, no matter what anyone could ever hope to do, there was no convincing some people that she didn't cheat. They were already convinced and nothing was going to change their minds. This amicable breakup that was figured out in private was now one of the biggest controversies the internet had ever seen over rumors and conspiracies. But seeing that these same people who made conspiracies were right about her breaking up with Tenz, then to many people, it only made sense that they were also right about her being a cheater. That's the morbid reality of how the internet works. Look, in conclusion, this entire thing blew out of proportion the moment that both Kyedae and Tenz started messing around on Instagram. I truly don't understand why they would do that. With their experience being content creators for many years, I really don't get what went through their heads. Maybe they underestimated just how much of a big deal their relationship was to the internet. Maybe they were going through such a heartbreak that they didn't think clearly. But overall, this was a major lapse in judgment. When this happened, and when Tenz pretty much confirmed their breakup after streaming without the ring, the Parasocials already knew that they had broken up. They had already moved on to how they broke up. This didn't allow Kyedae or Tenz to have control of the narrative of their own breakup story. So by the time she came out with her post, it was already too late. Damned if you do, damned if you don't. Nothing was going to change that. And it seemed like the breakup vibes were contagious, because Kyedae's sister, who had also blown up with Jason the Ween due to their public relationship, had also broken up very shortly afterwards. Barely 24 hours after Kyedae posted her breakup message. They of course would get way less backlash since her older sister was taking all the hate, but the timing was definitely interesting, and I'm sure the conspiracy theorists are going to have a very fun time dissecting why this happened. But overall, if there's anything to learn from this, never reveal your relationship to the public when you are a public personality, because as soon as you do, it's not your relationship anymore. You lose complete control over it. People get into relationships and break up all the time. It's just the nature of being a human being, especially in the 21st century. But as a content creator, you're seen as a perfect person, so you're not allowed to be human. You can't just get into a relationship and break up. You'll be called all sorts of things. You're not allowed to make mistakes. Both Tenz and Kyedae benefited greatly from this. But once it ended, now they're going through one of the worst times of their lives. This is why many choose to keep their relationships private. And honestly, it could just be me, but I feel like ever since this year started, Twitter has been overly vile lately, like more than usual. Maybe because of some of the algorithm changes, but that's just something I've personally noticed. Let me know if you've come to the same conclusion in the comments. In any case, thank you so much for watching until the end. I really appreciate it. Don't forget to use the code MUJIN to get 10% off your next purchase on Gamersubs, and I'll see you in the next video whenever that is. I love you so much, platonically. Mwah!